So yeah, today's just March 13th, Saturday. We're here at Connect Co-working, and this is the Agile for Humanity Tucson Meetup webinar series. Where we always like to talk about upcoming events and share those back. So April 29th through May 1st, we have Deliver, which is the Agile Alliance event in Nashville, Tennessee. We have Richard Kasparowski is going to be here next month for our webinar series. He was here, he was just here like a month ago for our conference that we had here in town locally. So in May 20th to the 22nd in Austin, Texas, there's the Global Scrum Gathering. So that's a great event if you could get there. So we have the 5 Saturdays Agile Education Outreach Program where we teach high school students tech to be entrepreneurs. We teach them how to build resumes, look for a job. So we have them in Costa Mesa and Orange, California, but we're having one here in Tucson, Arizona, starting June 15th as well. So we have that going on. August 5th through the 9th, if you want to get out to the big Agile conference, there are about anywhere between 25 to 3,500 Agilists from around the world out there in Washington, D.C. And then there's the Big Ten West Festival here in Tucson, and, we'll have a presence there as well. I just want to let everyone know these are activities that are happening, throughout the country for most of the year. And as more things come up, and if people have local stuff that's going on, like Allison, I know you guys have stuff happening out in Dallas. We're just trying to be a community, and we want to share back with everyone who have interest in agility as a practice. So I just want to put that out there. We have 3 sponsors for this event. We have the Agile Alliance, we have the Scrum Alliance, the 2 major organizations that really are champions for agility. Nalshare also is a sponsor, provides space. And so just wanted to let you know and acknowledge that, our sponsors help us to move things along and give us an opportunity to have these events and to share back. Well, I think it's time for us to get on with the show, right? We have Jutta Eckstein, and she will go through and correct me if I just butchered her name. And I'll stop sharing and allow Jutta to get on, and we'll have a great presentation today. So I'll stop share. So Jutta, feel free, jump in, go for it.
Yes, I will.
So this is working. I'm looking up to the sky.
Okay, so you see my screen?
Yeah.
That's cool. So thank you so much for the invitation. And I want to present today the BOSSANova Beyond Agile Preparing for Digitalization, which is based on a book I recently published together with John Buck. And you see already on the cover of the book that we really tried very hard to put all the different buzzwords together and put them on one thing. Anyway, but we also forgot a few of the buzzwords. For example, VUCA is missing. So this didn't make it, although it's the major motivation for the whole BOSSANova thing, because we just, as all of you realize, that the world is so volatile and so complex and ambiguous that the things that we have done so far don't help us anymore. And on top of that, and this goes together with why I call this talk preparing for digitalization, on top of that, we have digitalization, which means that every company is now a software company, although it might not know it yet. And that's really a new way of thinking about what's going on. So I just a few years back, I remember talking to a manager in BMW, so I'm from BMW, that's why BMW. And he said, well, he doesn't think that BMW is a car manufacturer anymore. They are actually a software company because the key differentiator between their cars and another car is the software that's in the car. And I'm pretty sure there is still, although this was a while back, still, if I would talk now to other managers at BMW, there are enough who would say that's not true. So I'm not saying that everyone thinks that way, but there's a really big truth within that. And all of that together, so the VUCA together with the, I have a really strange sound here. I don't know. Well, the VUCA together with the digitalization actually asks companies to be agile. And being agile in almost a literal sense, meaning being flexible, responsive, um, fast, also like nimble. And so for that, it's not enough to just use, for example, Scrum. And that's also what we are seeing, that then people say, okay, we just apply Scrum for the whole organization. And then they end up with doing stuff like the board of director is now having a Scrum Master and they're running their meetings through a backlog and have a daily Scrum or something like this. This might make their meetings better, but it's not really helping the company itself to become really agile. So that's why we were looking at what really would help companies to be agile. And of course, there's a lot of stuff out there. And the core stuff that we found is these four: beyond budgeting, open space, sociocracy, and of course agile as well. And the nice thing after playing around with that as well was that, well, it ended up to be pronounceable with the BOSSANova. The thing is, these four core streams, they all bring a completely different perspective on the organization. So, which also is reflected in if you talk to those different people, they would all tell you, well, actually, you don't need more than what we are doing in order to make a company agile. For example, beyond budgeting, they're saying, well, kind of the other way around. As long as you're not able to make the budgeting process flexible, adaptive, responsive, fast, there's no way of being agile as a company. So as long as you keep fixing the budget like a year in advance or so, because the market and the competition will just move ahead of you, and you're still sitting in calculating against your former budget. And for open space, it's kind of similar that there people say, well, if you are not starting to have an inviting um, attitude in your company, people will just do their job and not start thinking outside the box and kind of coming up with innovative ideas. And so that's the key for surviving in this VUCA world and for being really agile again in the meaning of flexible, responsive, fast, nimble, and so on. And so sociocracies as well, as long as the power structure is just top down and decisions are made central, you are just too slow. No way of being agile. No, and of course, the agile people say that as well. But without agile, you're not agile. So the thing is, hey, all those four, they provide a different perspective on a company and add something that helps companies to really become agile. I want to look a little bit deeper into these different streams. So starting with beyond budgeting. The, one of the problems they are having is the same as we see in many areas in Agile, for example, extreme programming, where a lot of people said it's too extreme and too much programming, and so the terminology wasn't chosen wise. And so beyond budgeting has, in one sense, a similar thing that they say it's actually not really about budgeting, it's more about management. And so their definition is that it's really beyond command and control, and it's more a management model that's more empowered and adaptive. However, what they also say, management follows the money. And so if you're not coming up with a way of running the way you budget things, then so in an agile or more humane even way, then also management will help you do so. So it's kind of interwoven. And the key of, the key of beyond budgeting, and there's really more to it than just this, what I'm presenting here, but it's kind of at the core of it, is the understanding that the budget as it is actually tries to serve three different purposes. And often we think of a budget like it's just doing one, but actually it's doing three different things. The one thing it's doing is trying to answer what are we aiming for? So what's our objective? Where do we head? And the second one is like, what do we think will happen in whatever a short, medium, long-term future? So that's the forecast. And the third thing is, where do we actually want to spend our money on? And so that's resource allocation. And it's just a kind of a disclaimer here. Here, really, resource is meant as money, and it's not meant as people. I know that it's kind of a no word in the agile world. That's why I always feel I need to make that disclaimer. Once you understand that the budget actually fulfills these three purposes, you can also look at them in a different way. So, for example, for a target, typically we look at the target, if we look at it in a traditional way, more in a way like it has to be fixed. So, like I'm in Europe, so heading to Venice. So it's somewhere to go. It's a place. It's some end goal. However, in the VUCA world, something that's fixed and set in an absolute term doesn't really help because the world is turning too fast and it's just kind of outdated the next day, more or less. And so the key thing with targets is that they need to be relative. And just to give you an example, which might not be true for your role, but I think it's still helping to get the point across. So if you think about me being a salesperson, which I'm not, and I'm not qualified for it at all, but if I would be a salesperson and my target would be to sell like 100 units of our product over the year, and if I do, then I get my bonus, and which is kind of a target sales people get, right? And then imagine I do that and the end of year comes and I have sold 100 units. I think, yeah, I get my bonus, so this is very cool. Now, what does this really mean, me achieving that target, if our competitor has sold 200 units? So then, actually, I didn't do a good job. It seems the market was much better than what I did. Or maybe, of course, our product isn't good enough. That could be true too. Or on the other hand, what does that mean? Me selling 100 if our competitor only sold 20? So fixed or absolute target is really in this fast-moving world absolutely useless. And so whenever you think of a target, it should be relative so it can change over time with all the changes that are going on. And looking for a forecast, actually here we have the key thing where you think about the 1 year in advance fixing the budget, because that's what we try to do there. We think of what might happen, and based on that we decide like where will the resources go, so the resource allocation. However, doing this for such a long time doesn't really help. So what we need to do is really coming up with forecasts way more often. So more in a rolling way, or at least whenever a change is happening, then we have to look again. Is this having an effect on what we first thought is happening and where we decided to spend the money in? And now that we see the change happen, do we still think the forecast how we made it is enough and that we still should spend the money in that place where we are spending it, or should we change that? So looking at the forecast more often, and based on that, actually also the decision where will we allocate, what will we allocate the money for, or kind of what do we do with resource allocation has to be done dynamically. So this is kind of a key thing which changes a lot about how we deal not only with the budget, because budgets are ruling our business model, it also changes the way how we manage. Because now we have to look at what's happening around us and not only track according to some numbers. Now moving on to the next one, open space, and I kind of assume that most of you are pretty much familiar with open space as a facilitation technique where people come together as in like an unconference and come up with an agenda by suggesting topics that they're really passionate about. And then they work on the topics that interest them most. And if they're not interested anymore, then they move on and work on another topic. So that's kind of the open space as a conference technique, which is also actually a good thing to use in companies, for example, for kicking off a new product development or any kind of change as well. Well, or now the thing that people talk about right now as well, like open space agility. So it can also be used open space for having the a support for the agile transition. However, that's not really what I'm heading for here with the open space in that sense. What I mean here is more organizational open space, which means you think of the company as being kind of an ongoing marketplace where people have a standing invitation to come up and suggest ideas in terms of features, new products. It can be also a new process. And if there are enough people, like in a regular conference open space setting, if there are enough people who think this is a great idea and they have the passion to make that thing happen, that idea, then it is a go. So it's not waiting for any kind of think tank or maybe design thinking session or anything like that, but kind of having this open standing invitation open all the time. And what this actually does is it's stopping us using job descriptions as kind of boxes where we put people in, but more using the full potential of the people that they can come up and with any idea and follow their passion at any time. And this might sound a little bit weird if you haven't heard of this before, but however, there are actually companies which are run like that. So, for example, WL Ball runs like that. So the outdoor equipper, and it's just like anyone can come up with any kind of product at any time. And if there are enough people who think that's a good idea, then this product is a good. So it's really full empowerment for everyone, basically. Now, moving on to sociocracy. So sociocracy at its core is based on equivalence. And equivalence really in several ways, but mainly I want to point out two things. So one is equivalence regarding decision making. And it suggests to make decisions based on consent. And consent is not a spelling error, so it's not consensus. And it is consent. Well, no, let's start with consensus first. So consensus is kind of a thing where we try to get the agreement of everyone on the thing we want to decide upon. So it's working towards a joint agreement on it. Versus consent is looking for acceptance for the decision. And maybe it doesn't sound too strong, but the strong thing is if I accept something, it can't mean I just can't tolerate it. But it might not mean it's my favorite decision. I would have gone in a different direction. But consenting to it or being able to accept it opens the corridor for what kind of decisions we are making way further. And actually, it also, even if you don't go the full path of BOSSANova, just this, I think, is really a thing that helps so much. So it's whatever decision you are trying to make with a group, if you just try to ask the people if they can accept and live with that decision, and if not, then we are more than happy to hear their objection. And the objection has to be brought up in a way by saying, how does, if I have that objection, how do I think that making that decision will put our joint goal at risk? So it's not about I like it or I don't, but really how I think that what we are doing as a team, as a group, is now at risk of getting done because of that decision, which also means that it's way more likely, or it's not only likely, it's kind of everyone in the team is really happy to hear about that, which is completely different than at least how I experience consensus, where everyone always tries to convince the one who comes up with the objection that the objection is wrong or the person is wrong and what we want to do is right and pull the person over. Whereas in a consent decision making, it's really we are happy about the objection because it means we seem to have missed something earlier. And the thing that we missed is really important because we risk our joint goal. And so we want to know about that. And maybe one more thing for decision making, and it also helps for other kinds of decision making actually, is I absolutely recommend, and I learned that from decision making, is to put a time box on whatever you decide upon often helps to come to a decision. Because if you say, okay, can you live with that decision for the next 3 months, and then we revisit, that makes also a whole difference. So just this, I hope this, at least a takeaway you can take with, even if you don't take BOSSANova to the whole organization, you can take it to your group only. So the next thing I want to look at in terms of equivalence and sociocracy is a hierarchy. So if we look at a hierarchy as it's shown on that picture here, so somebody in the top, and then it's kind of a top-down structure. There are managers appointed from the top and further down and further down, and there's always one manager being responsible for the unit, team, group, department, whatever. Then if you look at this from an agile perspective, just yeah, try to do that. Then I think what's obvious, what's missing is the feedback loop. It's just a one-way thing. And so what Sociocracy is actually doing is suggesting to put feedback in a hierarchical structure by a thing that's called double linking. So it means that every group, every team, every unit is electing a representative, which is then representing the group one higher level up together with that appointed manager who was appointed top down. So every group unit team has like two different leaders, one appointed from the top, one elected from the bottom. And that goes through the whole hierarchy, meaning that you have that doubling everywhere. And what it does, actually, it looks at or addresses what we have actually a great term for, like for middle managers, we always call them or label them as being in a sandwich position. And the sandwich actually comes from that they're responsible for information decision transformation top to bottom, but they also want to stand in for the team unit they're responsible for, which is bottom up. And so that's the sandwich there. And now Sociocracy with the double linking just kind of stretch that sandwich out by having these two links, like one top-down link, one bottom-up link.
Hey, Jutta.
Yes.
So we have a little chat going on, and so one of the questions was, how do we, what companies are using this model that you could share? I think one of the questions is.
So for Sociocracy, or for
Yeah.
beyond budgeting, or for,
Yeah.
for Sociocracy, well, actually, or for BOSSANova maybe. So we have, well, on the one hand, in the book, we have several people sharing their experiences with it from different companies. That's the one thing. If I now speak for BOSSANova in total. And for each individual thing, there are really several companies doing it. Now, for Sociocracy, it's actually more in the health sector, like Bossa in the Netherlands. Well, actually, it comes from the Netherlands. That's why you find most of the companies in the Netherlands. So it exists there and it's known for many, many years. It comes from a company that's called Edinburgh Electrotechnique, so from electrotechnical company. However, many companies I know about who are using Sociocracy only are actually more in the non-profit sector, which is completely different from beyond budgeting. So they're the first companies using it were actually banks. So the best known one is the Swedish Handelsbanken. But also I know in Germany, like retail companies are using them. And one company for beyond budgeting, which is also probably, well, it is big and people are talking a lot about them, is Equinor, former Statoil. So there used to be an oil company only, but now because of renewable energy, it's got rebranded and they are more into offshoring wind parks, and that's why they are now called Equinor. So this is for them and for all of the BOSSANova together. Probably it is a company in Singapore and Taiwan, Titansoft, who is using all of the four streams really and doing a lot of experiments with that. And of course, also the clients of John and myself. So, for example, right now I'm working for a company in the public sector, which was a surprise to me. And they're looking into Sociocracy a lot after having started with Agile. And so this is kind of their next step. Right? Does this answer the question?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there another question or should I move on?
I think that's it.
Okay, so I move on. Okay, good. So that was Sociocracy, and I think that brings me to Agile. And I don't want to spend a lot of time here because I just assume that most of you know about Agile. The key thing here for me is really that inspect and adapt thing. And so just want to point that out. And of course, you might wonder why those four. And I started already kind of because they offer different perspectives on the organization. But still, there are maybe others which do that too, and that's really true. And so we looked at the time what's actually out there, and even at the time, what you're seeing these different themes, it's not a full picture. It was never one, and it's not now, and it always will be a snapshot because there's stuff popping up all the time. However, what we tried to do is we looked at, well, on the one hand, kind of taking a Goldilocks approach. So we didn't want to have something that's really a specific implementation, and we didn't want to have something that's very generic. So specific implementation versus philosophies. That's kind of a no-go for us because we felt that's not really helping. It's not practical in a way. And I know a lot of people are copying the Spotify model, but in actually, from my point of view, that doesn't really exist. Because also, if you look at Spotify, you see almost just the snapshots, and they are changing all the time. So if there is a model from Spotify, then it means like keep changing whatever you're doing, keep changing your structure, your strategy, your processes, everything. And and that's it. It's not kind of just using and copying skills and stuff. And yeah. And we look very much into these like the egalitarian methods. But then if you think for facilitation techniques, well now some people say why not liberating structures or so or whatever you can also think of, maybe appreciative inquiry. It's just because we also wanted to look and use stuff that's really used. And we know there are companies using this as their strategy, and we didn't find that for the other things. So, but for open space, we knew there are companies out there using it. And right, maybe I should say one more thing to the egalitarian methods. So we always decided for like the original thing. So that's why we decided on beyond budgeting and not on better codex, which is a kind of derivative of beyond budgeting or similar to holacracy, which is the derivative of sociocracy. So that's kind of a background to it, that we did look into other things, and we also incorporated a few more things than just those four, but those four are really the key streams. Now I want to shift a little bit and look at how, well, what do we see what companies are using actually? Consciously, BOSSANova, or unconsciously, so either way, actually. And the one thing that I want to show, which is actually also a former client of mine. So what we did there was it's an ERP company, but not the big German one, a smaller one. Um, there, the decision was to kind of think about a different way of structuring how we work on the whole product. And these were, now I don't know anymore. I think like about 100 people or so. And so what we did was we said, okay, we think we have these different areas where what which provide a domain of the product, so a kind of a feature tech or business area of the product. And we created these flip charts saying like, okay, and now we look for people who are interested in working on these things. So people could decide on which team they want to work on what kind of feature they want to work on with whoever they want to work together, and what kind of role they want to have within the team. Like the one to the left, the guy that's by himself, that's the product owner, for example. And so we had these just on the flip charts, and people could sign up, and they did. And there's always so it's self-selected teams basically, and there's always that fear which we had as well, at least when I did this the first time, that maybe there is stuff nobody wants to do because it's kind of boring stuff also. But people didn't do that, so they were responsible, and also they figured that well maybe this team has too much strength in that area which is missing somewhere else, and so it kind of they balanced them out and just did it by themselves. And so this way of self-selecting teams is just like kind of one first step into using organizational open space. The next step would be, well, to ask also the people what kind of domains they really are, and the next step is what kind of products they think we can work on. So this is kind of the first step into using organizational open space. And so for this team actually there, for these 100 people, most of the people were actually on one site. And if you wonder about this, we had also one site, so which was further away, and they kind of told us where they want to sign up. However, I have also done this just using a wiki, so for a completely distributed team, so that's also possible. Maybe it looks nicer here, like in a wiki. Okay, so this is one example. Now looking at another example, well, I guess everyone knows kind of this thing. So travel and expense reports, and I think almost hardly have found anyone who likes that. And typically, the one problem that we're having is that the processes around travel expense reports are really, well, too difficult, too annoying, and it also brings over that point, at least I often think, that companies trust their people to run like $1 million project, but they don't trust them to reserve a decent hotel or something. So there's like a rule and regulation for everything, but it just shows more or less mistrust. And I want to share what one company did, and it's a German software company called Agile, and they came up with just 3 rules for all the travel expenses. And the rules are really simple. So the first rule is whatever people do when they spend money for their travel, it has to be legal. Well, I don't think that's a good idea always. Then the second rule is that the money they are spending, it should be spent wisely or sensible. And it's not defined what it means. So it's just said like that. And the third rule is that people should take care of themselves. So it's not expected that they take long detours just for saving a few bucks. And the interesting thing is what the CEO just recently told me is that about a third of the people, and that's why that picture is here, which looks like a bit like a high-speed German train, an ICE, it's called. But a third of the people is always traveling first class, and the other 2/3 are traveling coach. And it's actually not the top management who is traveling first class. It's more the consultants doing that. And everyone seems to be fine with that because they're saying, well, they are traveling the most anyway, and for them it's really annoying, and so it's fine if they really take care for themselves. But that's an interesting effect. Nobody would have thought that something like this is happening because before they kind of regulated everything. What is allowed and not allowed? When can you go first or second or whatever class? And maybe one more thing, because there's another company I'm aware of. They just came up with one rule, and not only for travel expenses but for all expenses. So their rule is just you have to put it on the internet. You say how much money did you spend on what, and so it's more or less the peers who keep asking you about, well, was it really needed to spend as much there, or where did you find that cheap whatever, or shouldn't you have spent more? So it's really kind of the whole company community is more or less ensuring that people spending the money wisely. So now I want to look at, for these examples, what kind of values are actually behind them, if you think of these things. And the values that I'm seeing here are, on the one hand, transparency. So especially that, well, for the self-selecting team, definitely, but also for this travel expenses thing. So it is like transparent. Then it's a self-organizing way for both of these examples. It's about continuous learning as well, because people kept changing things while they were doing it, like the self-selecting teams. They just signed up somewhere and then they changed it, and they figured it's not working, they did something else. And what we didn't see here really in these examples, but we have others, the other thing that's kind of guiding everything is that they constantly look for the customer focus. So it's all aligned towards the customer focus. And well, if these values look familiar to you, then probably it's because they're more or less derived from the Agile Manifesto. And we have also a definition for those values, which I want to bring to you now. So for transparency, it is great transparency for all involved in two directions by providing information and lowering the barriers to those seeking information. And the interesting thing might be, at least I think, so it's not about making everything transparent. That's not helpful. At least I don't think it's helpful. I'm information overloaded already, so I don't want to kind of get all the information. But if I need it for, especially for making a decision, it shouldn't be a problem for me to get it. And that's a huge difference. Whereas in a lot of companies, information is used more as an instrument for power. Now, looking at self-organization, it says use accountable cross-functional teams that connect themselves and follow their passion with responsibility. So you hear a lot of open space stuff in here already. And then we have continuous learning, always learning, contribute to others' learning, get feedback, and adapt. Also here with the contribution to others' learning, this is also derived from open space. Then we have constant customer focus, which is focus-wide on every aspect of the company, product and process, structure and strategy, and individual contributions and people. So these are the values that we were also seeing that people kind of acknowledge if they're using stuff like what we are having in BOSSANova. We found also another thing, which is kind of a specific approach that people are using, which is mainly actually based in the continuous learning thing. And it is about, well, we call it probing. So what people do, they look at the situation they're in. Then they look at what can be done. So we call it here compare probes to situations. And probes, we use that because we also have in the book probes, but we collect more and more from people using these kinds of things. And so it can also mean you just heard maybe today something or from a different company that they tried something and you try it as well. So that's also kind of a comparing to any probe that fits to your situation. Then you try an experiment, and I want to also say a little bit more about this, just quickly. And then you reflect again on your situation. Now, if you really think of this the way we are thinking of it as a scientific approach, then you should also publish about your probing, at least to your peers within the company, but even better, even beyond the company, so that we can all create and enlarge that knowledge about what can be done for companies to become more agile, really. Now, looking at a probe, I want to bring one example like we've just seen. And the probe is called Is Trust Cheaper? And it goes to this travel expense example. So we have a background definition. So, for example, that the travel expenses procedures are really annoying, blah, blah, blah. And then we come up with a hypothesis that actually the procedures companies are using often cost more than they save, and they also are demoralizing. And so then we come up and suggest one or several experiments. However, what you always should do, like pre-survey and audit, for example, if it's really true that kind of they are costly and how much do they cost, and are people frustrated and annoyed by the procedures or not, then you run an experiment like, for example, using these three principles from IT Agile. So take care for yourself and it has to be legal and sensible, the money you're spending. And you try it for a given time frame with maybe just one or two groups, and you have other groups where they are doing it as they did before, so as controls. And then after that time box, you post survey and audit. And if it's then really proving your hypothesis, you can roll it out to the rest of the unit. So this is what we understand about probing. So it has a background definition and hypothesis and one or several experiments. And it's always defined in a way, or it should be, if you are coming up with a thought, that it's also safe to fail in several ways. So safe to fail in that way that it is absolutely fine if we find out that our hypothesis is wrong, because we still learn, and that's actually not a failure; it's actually a great learning. And also safe to fail in this way: if you ask people if they want to take part in an experiment, and no matter if they want to or don't want to, there will be no punishment at all. So it doesn't mean anything from that perspective. So this is what we mean, that it should be really safe here. Okay, I want to share maybe one or two other ideas for folks. So one is failures opportunities. And actually where I want to head there is that we hear in the Agile world so often, like fail fast is very important. Yet the real important thing, I believe, is to learn fast. So, and that's a huge difference, because nobody really wants to make failures by unconscious, but everyone wants to learn and get better. And so we should also frame it that way. And therefore, a failure is never really a failure, as I said before with the example of the approach. A failure is then a learning opportunity. And what we found, and I can imagine you have seen that too, as long as we are saying in a company, well, we have this culture of fail fast or now hopefully learn fast, but if it's just kind of said this way, but we have never seen somebody from the top saying, see, last week, this is what happened and this is what I learned. So having role models from the top, if we don't have that, it will never roll through the whole company, because people understand it's just a lip service and it's nothing that people really mean that way. And now I want to share one more trope you might think of, or maybe that inspires you for a trope. So this is something that we heard from a bank. So it's actually, it came also after we put this out. So but that's also what I mean. There are more and more tropes done and published, and we hear about them. So this is not an actual picture, but it is about the meetings of of the board of directors from a bank. And this is just my imagination how that meeting room should look like if it's in a bank. I think it looks really serious banking kind of, and maybe it really looks completely different for that bank. However, what they did, they decided to try what's happening if they move out the table out of the boardroom and have their board of directors meetings in that room without a table. And what they found was that the conversations were way more open and honest, and they listened much better to each other. And the even more interesting thing, so this was kind of a hypothesis as well, but the even more interesting thing was a side effect, that the communication from the board to the rest of the company also improved a lot because of that, because that open and honest communication just trickled down out or trickled outside the boardroom. And so what we kind of see there, well, is on the one hand, it doesn't need a lot to make a huge difference. So moving out of the table is not a big thing. And I'm not thinking that everyone who is listening is on a board of directors and doing it there. But the thing is, whatever kind of probe you are doing or change you are trying, it can be a small thing and still have a huge impact. So basically, what you're suggesting with BOSSANova is actually this. And I know it looks quite similar than the one before. Let me go back just quickly, and you look to the very right. So here it says compare probes to situation, and here it says design probes. Because that's actually the key thing. It's reflecting on the situation you're in. Excuse me. Designing a probe, trying and experimenting, and then sure.
So if anyone have any questions to think about, as we bring Jutta back in, she comes back in, we could do that. Let me go ahead and try. I think there's one more person that came in. Maybe I'll wait till she finishes her presentation. Then I'll add him as a panelist so that at least we could hear him speak.
Okay. I think I can.
Have a sip of water or beer.
Yeah, Okay. I have a cup of tea next to me, but it seems like well, I'm actually at the end, so that's good. Maybe I can just try it this way. I had a cold, I also had one. That's fine. Okay, so here we are. So that's the essence. That digitalization actually, we believe, requires that company-wide agility or organizations that are edge throughout. And we think BOSSANova just does that for companies. So, but basically, this means for a company to never stop trying. And I think I'm really done. My voice is gone. I'm sorry. So, thank you so much. And I'm really sorry.
No, this was awesome. Thank you so much. We could use this time now for discussion, conversations, among ourselves, not just with Jutta, right? Because there's a lot of learning that was dispensed today. And I'm really grateful for the fact that she's here in Tucson, even though she's in Germany, right? I mean, and so that's the beauty of digitization of technology, right? We could start bringing in, different minds, into the space that we live in, even though we live, close to the border, which is an awesome thing. So I think there's one more person who came in, and let me try and tap that person in to the conversation, just so we can have more we can just have him in as well. Hold on a second and do my best with my modified tech here. And let me see. 6 participants, your list. 10. Come on. Huh. I guess no one is there. Okay. Fair enough. Trash my iPad. So if we have any questions, any conversations we want to have, if not, we could go on and enjoy the rest of our Saturdays. But if there are any questions, thoughts, I think what we learned here was really awesome today. So.
Okay, let's see. I think it goes a little bit better after some coffee. Yeah, thank you so much, Dave, for taking over.
All right. I mean, so if there aren't any other questions, I would just like to say thank you so much, Jutta, for giving up your time today. And this is very fascinating to me. I could resonate a lot with what you said and what you shared today, especially beyond budgeting. I think that was, really good stuff. for us to look at and reflect on. So, with that, just thank you. The other thing is,
inviting me, Dave.
Yeah, no, really appreciate it. The other thing is we're going to share back the recording of this, and perhaps I'll get Jutta to send us her slides, and then we'll put that also in our meetup space. So that's going to be available for us to share.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, thank you so much. So next month we have Richard Kasperowski looking at certain types of what he was looking for, high performance teams. Right? We had him here, last month, and so that should be nice and fun. And so look forward to that invitation. Hey, Allison, I think we need to get you involved, so maybe you could be interested for an August webinar.
Okay. Yeah, that would be interesting.
Go to Dallas. I don't have any alternate cities.
Okay, awesome. So I'll send you an invite offline, and perhaps we could take one of your topics. I don't know why I can't see myself. Maybe I need to come this way. Hi. Bring one of your topics in for August. Cool. So thank you, everyone. Peace. We'll see you next month.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Great presentation. Bye.
Thank you.
Yep.
Psychedelic feelings I can't please myself. Changes in my visions running wild in my head. Feeding on my madness, releasing myself. Can I get a witness to convince someone else?